Welcome to The First Turn. I'm your host, Hyena, and today, Llama and I are talking about This Week in Warhammer. If you like what you hear, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share, or let us know if there's something you'd like to hear us talk about. Alright, let's get to it.
Yeah, welcome to The First Turn. I'm Hyena.
I'm Llama.
Today we've got some stuff to talk about. A little bit.
Stuff. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving came and went. I know I had a good time. Way over 8, as I do.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But for you across the pond who don't get to experience it, it is forced time with family.
And
over usually bad meal.
and unjustified excessive amounts of eating.
Yep. Because I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw this out there. I'm a big eater. I like eating.
Mm-hmm.
I think turkey is overrated. No, I don't think turkey's overrated. I think a lot of people don't like turkey for good reason. I'll say that. Turkey's weak.
I think a lot of people make it poorly.
But that's a big problem, right? That's a big part of it, is nobody knows how to make a turkey.
Nope.
And so we end up with these overcooked, dry. Just, gravy-absorbing chunks of just sand meat.
Unpleasurable to chew.
Yeah, it's just no good. And that was my childhood growing up, was that.
Yep.
Pretty much every time anyone made turkey around me, it was that experience. Now, I myself know the pitfalls of turkey making, and I make myself a great turkey.
Yep.
But I don't like turkey enough to make it.
Yeah,
basically, we made turkey a couple of years just to prove that turkey can be good.
Yeah, we did. We had an actual game night with our friends, and a Friendsgiving thing, and then you did the whole brine and everything with it, and why that step is skipped by so many people, because it changes turkey no matter how you flavor it, no matter what you put alongside it. It changes turkey from dry and to like this is freaking delicious.
Mm-hmm.
We just kept snacking on it all night. It was
really
good.
funny. It's like we cut a piece for the plate for later, and then we eat some of it as we were going. We were alternating.
But that said, turkey's a lot of work,
Yes,
and so sometimes it's just not
cumbersome. It's because it's a big thing to have to make.
Doesn't sit nice in your freezer because it's round and which, by the way, I have one. I have a 14-pound sitting in my freezer right now because I got it for free from something. So, but that has come and gone.
Yep.
And back to it, and we don't partake much in the Middle Earth miniatures stuff.
Yeah.
But man, they're making some good-looking ones.
This week has been packed with stuff because I think they're trying to capitalize on some of the recent Lord of the Rings media.
Yeah.
Your War of the Rohirrim.
Is that out yet?
I don't think it. I think it's coming.
Or series or whatever it is?
I think it's coming. I don't think it's out yet. It's an animated one.
It's an Amazon thing,
but they're trying to coincide this release with that, I believe.
Yeah, that's what the miniatures are from. I think the articles even said they're from the story.
Perfect. So there you go. So I mean, they're trying to time that so they come out at the same time, which strategically makes sense.
Well, I mean, when Lord of the Rings first caught on fire, it was during the movie bubble.
Yeah. But I think strategically it makes sense to do that. But I think it fills in some holes that we were wondering about production and about where the releases are for the other games.
Right.
There's a lot of kits they had to make for this release.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, well, there's where your production time went. It went towards Lord of the Rings. That's why 40K isn't getting anything for the rest of the year.
Well,
that's why booking a model.
That's all slaves get. Yeah. And in a rumor I heard today from someone who was visiting, was that a part of that process for them, why their production struggles a bit, is I know they had purchased a plot of land to do their warehouse expansion, so they could up their production ability. But I think they purchased that plot of land like pre-COVID, and so they just kind of sat on it, and it hasn't been used. And then there's different laws in the UK in terms of what they have to do for hiring. They have to set up apartments for like employees nearby and all this weird stuff. And so I guess their current production facility, they basically run the warehouse with like 12 people a day.
Jeez.
That's it. So if that's true, that's people taking on a lot of work.
Right.
And so to change anything over, like if they're producing off of one mold or a series of molds, whatever their facilities are capable of, and they have to change it over for something, I got to imagine that's a great big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right, their production ability was probably all tied into Lord of the Rings for now, or Middle Earth stuff for now. Right. So,
well, there was also really big releases for Titanicus,
yeah,
Legions Imperialis.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of focus on the smaller games, right? Then the larger games are kind of suffering a little.
Yep.
But I mean, not that we haven't got teasers and reveals and stuff about things coming. It's just not the.
In the early months of 25 will probably be pretty big.
It's not the scale and the pace that we wish for in order to get things up to date, right? Like, yes, they're remedying some things now. Look at all the aspects we were getting for Eldar, right? Those are all finally getting updated.
Yeah.
It's been a long time
But
coming.
that's still a ways out.
Yeah, you're right. But it's been a long time coming there. And they are actually getting to it. But I feel like with the old world taking up time and stealing models from AOS, stealing them back, and them not just replacing them. There's no backfill for some of those losses.
Yep.
Right? It's like you're just cannibalizing AOS. You're making your AOS armies less flavorful by just cutting models from them and having no functional replacement. Having no replacement, right? And that's kind of a problem. I mean, that happened with Stormcast. A lot of the cool Stormcast models from some of the waves just got removed with nothing. Like, there aren't wizards in Stormcast anymore. There's not shooting in Stormcast anymore. You got rid of that section of the army, and you didn't replace them.
Although performance-wise, they seem to be doing just fine.
They're fun. But it still feels, because it's like if you want to play that stuff, you will not have that offer.
Nope.
Now you have to play melee. That's what you have to do now, because everyone will be getting gone, and it just kind of feels.
Yeah.
But putting the damper.
Well, and with since we're both biased because we both partake in Slaves to Darkness.
Yeah.
With their book coming out next weekend, a lot of people already have it in hand and have done full reviews. You can find them online. The initial chatter, one site, Goonhammer, was optimistic about it. They just said it was very different from what we're used to. You and I looked at it, and we're a little more pessimistic, I think. It feels like the change doesn't do anything to upgrade the army.
I would say change nothing, right?
Yeah.
Even none of that used to be.
Right. Instead of assigning, for example, a mark to every unit in your army,
right,
except for Dark Oath, you now once per hero phase pledge a mark.
Once per phase.
Yeah, your hero phase. Pledge a mark to one of your units. Right. Now the marks themselves are pretty good.
And it stays for the game.
And it stays for the game.
But
yeah.
Right.
5 units.
One unit marked for 5 for one.
Yeah.
So the 5th mark, 1 turn.
Assuming you have enough alive to.
And why? You say, well, I don't need, maybe I'll do Zinch and flicker a unit away.
Right, or maybe I need to make a long charge. I'll do a 3d6 thing with Slanesh.
So
yeah.
Like, okay, I'm going to give all my. You know what I mean? And just have them beginning and to do
including
that
Undivided. Right. And
including you were just as your, which gave you a benefit.
Yeah. And so it'll be interesting to see how that feels, because it'll be different. And then replacing the Eye of Gods, which the Eye of Gods was random, and it required you to kill something.
And some of it, maybe the problem with it is too easy. Kill, that's too easy. That's too much.
Right.
Make it hard. Make it so you have to kill it to do something, right?
And there were times with the randomness where you would roll something that didn't really benefit the unit.
Sure.
But now we get a single model nominated at the start of the game. Gets to go through Dark Apotheosis, which, so if they declare a fight ability or they contest an objective outside of their zone, they accrue D3 points once they have 8, which does mean, by the way, they might not get it until turn 5.
They may not get it.
They may not even get it.
Keep rolling. You may be points.
Yeah.
And you think a foot's 5 up.
Right.
Or maybe a
sure.
Less chance than an objective.
Yeah, chances are turn 1 they're not accruing anything.
Right.
And so, woohoo, on my turn 5, assuming he's still alive, he heals himself and gets a ward that won't come into play, or I'm going to turn him into a Demon Prince, but guess what? He can't move.
Right.
So it's
I'll upgrade from a 140 point hero to a 200 point hero for 1 turn. Like, it's just
again we're going to have to see it in action to feel if it's really worse. I mean, the core the army rules for slaves were never their strength. It was that their units had good stats.
Right.
And so maybe that still holds true, because it sounds like their stats are largely unchanged, short of some rewording. And maybe Dark Oath will be better now.
There's nothing that indicates that they will.
Their Spearhead because sounds downright incredible.
Yeah, the Spearhead got all kinds of cool, flavorful rules.
Yeah.
But they don't carry over to AOS.
Nope.
Which is insane to me. It's like, who decided that was a good idea? Like, you came up with this really cool idea for them. of gaining glory and stuff, and then it's like, but they don't actually get to do that except in this other mini game.
Yeah.
This basic version of the game where if you play that Slaves of Darkness army in Spearhead and you get used to those mechanics and then you want to take them into the bigger game, guess what? You lose all of that. Forget it. Forget all of that.
Yep. You get none of it.
Weird.
And now you made one point on the positive side that there were rules in Slaves to Darkness prior that, like, heroes could only grant to a unit when they shared a mark, for example.
Yep.
And that now is gone.
Yeah. That made things cumbersome. That made you lean into your entire army being the same mark.
Right.
It made your army less
Slaves to Darkness and more mono.
Less diverse,
yeah.
right. Like, you became like, okay, well, I'm playing a Nurgle Slave to Darkness army because Nurgle was straight up the best mark, had the best passive. What do you get? Oh, you're -1 to wound me in melee.
Yeah.
Always. That's ridiculous. That is so good. That's why you'd be like, all right, well, I got this one unit that's going to go out there and really punch their corn. What's the rest of your army? Nurgle.
The other 7 units are all Nurgle.
Everything else needs to just go hold objectives as all Nurgle.
Yep.
So you're playing Nurgle is what you're playing.
And
well, there already exists a Nurgle army. We don't need that
Megakin,
out
right.
of Slaves of Darkness.
And so that is kind of gone. And I will say that based on what these pledges are, they are much more balanced. There's an incentive to play each, but again, you don't get to start the game with them other than one unit having the Ensorcelled Banner, which gives them that pledge right away. So that could be useful. I could see like standard Chaos Knights taking the Slanesh one because you get the extra speed, you get the extra attack on the charge.
Because you're +1 to wound and +1
attacks.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And so some of those, I think, whichever unit has the banner will be probably the best one in your army.
Right.
Although Varangard don't have a banner, so they don't get to do it.
Just can't have banners.
Correct.
So,
but this new pledge system also means, for example, that once again, Archaon has no marks,
right,
and can't have them.
The leader of the army can benefit from not the Eye of the Gods, not the pledge system for his marks.
He can't do Dark Apotheosis.
He can't take any of the banners. Like the leader of the army doesn't get to benefit from any of the rules of the army. What the fuck?
Right.
Oh, and not just him. Abraxia, the lieutenant,
Be'lakor,
any of the named characters, they don't get anything out of any of the rules.
No.
I think either the army's just going to be dog shit for this edition.
Right.
So they get a new book. Or they're going to be like, whoops, we released this and it was really dumb. Here is a complete change.
Massive patch, yeah.
Here's a complete change to the army rules in a balanced data slate kind of thing.
And it's...
War Scroll.
That can be there's two things I'm going to say to that is War Scroll, whatever it is. So two things. One, Be'lakor prior to this book was one of the best single models in the game already. He's largely unchanged, and he got an army of renown.
Right.
So if you're talking about the things that are going to be potent, at least on paper, well, he now gets to do the thing he used to do in 2nd edition, where he takes a bunch of demon infantry and he pawns wounds off on them.
Right.
Now, Army of Renowns, however, are restricted, so he can't buy a bunch of other slaves units. If you take that Army of Renown, he's locked into this, so there's your drawback. But you're now going to have one of the most effective single models in the game, almost impossible to kill.
Yeah. Actually, what I think the best thing in the book is the fact that it adds 2 new... regiments of renown that can be taken by other armies. One of them is like a warriors and knights, kind of small contingent 600-point army. The other army or regiment of renown is just a single demon prince with a mark.
Oh, they did that so that the 4 mono god armies can actually take a demon prince.
Yes, but that's the best way. That's the best thing to come out of the book is you can take a demon prince in a different army.
That's the best thing.
That's the best thing that's in this book.
As to so this being the first battle tome in the new edition that isn't from the 2 starting armies.
Which also didn't fulfill any kind of, let's say, fetishization. No, didn't fulfill any hopes that the armies would be better than the index.
Right.
They also were exactly the same as the index. Those books were, God, they were so useless to have. Other than adding new stuff that wasn't in the Skaven index, they added new stuff to the Skaven army. Like, they just... I feel like I'm going to buy my 3rd book and it's useless. Well, you know what I mean?
And we've had that discussion a number of times in terms of them requiring that we buy these books to unlock rules for our army. And now when the books themselves are largely useless in terms of what they add,
right,
it doubles down on that
idea. All it is now you have to pay for the rules you were using for the last few months.
Right.
Because nothing changed.
Right.
But the rules are now changed. It just barely enough that now you have to pay for them.
Now you have to pay for them.
And it's not even a small amount. It's like $60 or $70.
So here's the interesting thing, is they did this same thing last year with 40K 10th launch. So Marines and Tyranids got their codexes, and they weren't really different from their indexes. And then the first army, what was the first army that came out after that?
Probably Eldar.
Was it? No, they don't have their codex yet.
Oh, do they not?
Was it Dark Angels, maybe?
No, Dark Angels was later. Orcs was pretty early. Necrons?
Might have been Necrons.
Might
have been Necrons.
Necrons was the third one.
So this feels a little like that, where Slaves to Darkness was supposed to be, and that was, again, quoting Goonhammer, when they were looking forward to it before they got their copy, they were saying, like, this is going to be the first indicator of what the battletomes are going to look like for this edition. Like, how are they doing it to make the army interesting, and how are they going to make them different from their indexes? And then it was like, well, they made the core rule different from the index, sure.
Right.
So it is technically different, but the units are almost not different at all.
There were 2 changes.
Right.
No, there were 3 total changes that were made in the entire list of War Scrolls. One of it was Abraxia's damage track is now on her monster.
Instead of on her spear, yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
And the other 2 were just straight up things get removed.
Yep.
So the Demon Prince loses the ability to give out a Mark of Chaos.
Yep.
And Archeon loses the ability to have a Mark of Chaos. That was pretty much it. That was it.
Yep.
Oh, I guess the Demon Prince gets 50-50 fights first instead. But that was it. That was the only changes. There was nothing else. Literally nothing else.
Yeah, and so these books being these $60+ investments now feel doubly worse, because not only do you pay for it just to put it on a shelf and unlock the app, the rules in the app, but it didn't really give you anything new. I mean, I'm going to get it anyway because I'm an idiot, and I'm going to look through, and maybe there'll be an obviously, and there might be like, you know, hey, here's a paint scheme I never thought of. Sure, yeah, whatever. When I'm already partway into my army, but that doesn't incentivize anyone to trust in the paper books, which, by the way, is not only a Games Workshop thing. I learned, and we'll get to that in a bit, that another company does that, only far worse. But so it's weird, is usually you hear us talk on here pretty optimistically about an army's updated release, especially when it's our own armies, because it's like, hey, something new, they needed it. I'm reading this and I'm like, I have to try it on the table, because right now this feels like it was a straight downgrade to an army that was only finding success anyway with a very limited range of build.
Oh, and also you lose 4 units.
And yeah.
You know, it's just like, why? Some say maybe even a fan favorite for the army, which was anything riding on a Manticore, was one of the favorite units in the army.
Nothing riding on a Manticore.
Yeah. Get rid of the War Shrine, whatever. That crappy model sucked. Whatever. Get rid of the Defiler, Soul Grinder, whatever.
That I don't miss at all.
It shouldn't have been there in the army in the first place. But like, offer me something else. Offer me some solutions.
And so there was my thoughts, is like, I was willing to wait for our turn for this army if they have plans, which they may, because you talked last week about some of their roadmap and what things might be coming for armies, even though it might be after or well before they get their book. And slaves might have stuff coming, but then don't release
a book.
Don't release the book now.
Yeah.
Wait until that happens. And it feels out of place, and it feels like maybe this was made in a stage of the design phase that's just nowhere close to where they hope the army lands.
Then that highlights a bigger issue then.
Yep.
Or another issue, right? Is either one of 2 things are happening. One, you're making the books so far in advance that you don't know what the landscape of the game is going to look like when you're printing it,
which we've already suspected.
And then you sit on it, and then it's completely outdated by the time you release it, and you're still asking people to buy it.
Yeah.
Or your design team is clueless, and they're making it right now after they've seen things that have been released already for the edition, and they came up with this as a current solution to the game. And that would be even worse.
That would be far worse. And when we listen to their designers' commentary, when there's a big change, whether it's the battle scroll for AOS or the chapter approved for 40K.
Balanced data slate.
General's Handbook chapter approved. Those are what those are. Yeah. We'll get them all.
We'll get there.
So when they do those big updates and you listen to them talk, it's like these guys know what's going on. These guys and girls know what's going on in the meta. They know where armies have problems or maybe are too good. So when I have to think it's the former, and that they designed it so far in advance and sat on it that this is what we got, and now it's already out of place.
Right.
And that's disappointing.
Or like we had thought before, is maybe the army rules writers are not communicating or being given the same information that the unit rules writers are receiving, because we saw that with like Skaven, for example, right? When the or even the model designers too. Maybe there's 3 separate groups of people who are coming up with models, rules, army rules, who are just not getting the same information, right? Because we were talking about Skaven having the new Storm Vermin. The leader of it is literally modeled with a pistol. And there's not even a whiff of a pistol, of a ranged weapon on that on that army. Like, what is that about?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So maybe we're seeing something where it's like, all right, well, maybe the rules team was supposed to be coming up with a toned-down version of the army rules because they were considered too strong. But we were going to see some changes made to the data sheets, the war scrolls for the different units that were going to compensate for the fact that we lost some power in the army. But then that didn't happen, and then the nerf to the army happened as well. And then so what do you have is you've got your only avenue, which is change the digital points. And basically everything that's unplayed in the army came down by 20. That was it. That was the change. That's all you had. So it's like, so not only did the units that I want to play not have a points change, but now their army is worse, and they are arguably worse units because they lost their mark system too.
Yeah.
It's like, why do I want to play this army? You just made it worse in 3 different ways. And then you gave me updated models for it not too long ago. And then you gave them this treatment. It's just boggling, right?
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. It feels really bad.
Yeah. And if it's true that they're, low staffed or whatever, for whatever reason that may be, if it's true, it might be the case in their design team even, and you're asking now a lot of these people, and they're not communicating with each other,
right,
or not getting the same information.
Or maybe they don't even play these games, so they don't realize that the changes they're making aren't,
right, it's just a job or something,
aren't great or aren't impactful, or they look at these things as like, yeah, it looks good to me. It looks like everything else. It's like,
right,
yeah, but everything is boring now. We want more excitement to come out of these units. I mean, I was saying a couple days ago that I'm fine with like basic infantry being boring, right? Toting the game back from 3rd edition. 3rd edition, every single unit had a unique special rule.
Right.
And it was too much. Like, it was too much to remember. It was too much to keep track of. It was not only for you, but for your opponent to remember what the things did. And then there's weird interactions of how does this interaction work? Because everything is unique. Everything's not quite worded the same.
Yeah.
But now it's like, all right, well, we removed all of that. And now it's like, you might have had a rule before that said, well, when you attack, if you roll a 6 to hit, you deal this. Now it's just a weapon ability. So you have even less text on your unit because it's just a weapon ability, which I don't mind. I don't mind.
USRs are good.
I don't mind that. But then those units now, you look at them and there's a half of a page dedicated to them for a stat block, and the bottom is just empty. Because they don't have any special rules anymore.
And
right?
That's how they format it in the new books now. They'll put 2 of them side by side on the same page, and it's the tall way.
Yeah.
So there's just all this blank tan space.
And it's like, okay, do you not see what's going on here? But again, if it's like infantry or basic guys, I'm fine with it, right? I'm fine with it not having anything special. But then you scroll to the section where it's got the heroes, and the heroes are exactly the same. And it's like, where is any of the flavor? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want it to be just, oh, you bring a foot hero, well, this guy can fight, and then a unit nearby can fight right after him.
Yeah.
Why did I take the hero in the first place? Other than the fact that I have to, because it leads my regiment.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, what is the purpose of taking that guy into the fight?
160 point
160
tax to unlock a regiment.
Nothing,
yeah.
Right? Like, I'll just fight with the unit. The guy is not going to accomplish any more than the unit's going to accomplish.
Right. Unit's always better.
But if the characters and the leaders that are in your army actually had rules and abilities and cool, unique things that they brought, I mean, look at like War Machine, right? The Warcasters and solos and stuff in that game had tons of special rules, and then the units themselves maybe had a thing they did. That's what I want to see in a game. right? I want to be able to remember this is what my hero level guys do, and they've got this cool stuff that they can do because I don't get access to very many of them. Yeah. And then my chaff unit guys just do a basic thing.
Well, in that design team, side note, you saw it carry over into Marvel Crisis Protocol where a lot of those guys moved. And now, granted, that's a game of just heroes, solos, but you see it as every single one on their card, they do like 5 things.
Yeah.
And
some of it's too many, and some of it's power creep, and because they release so many at a time, by the way.
But back up the line here. Yeah. War Machine, it was like that your heroes and solos did all this stuff. Your infantry were infantry.
Yeah.
And now in Age of Sigmar, we're seeing where it's like, well, this one named hero does a whole lot. Your Build-A-Bear hero, your generic hero
does nothing.
Just has keywords.
Yeah, not great.
And they bring a unit with them to fight.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
And
especially when you then took the army rules away to where only a single hero gets anything.
Right. I like the idea of some special, very powerful abilities being like once per turn per army, once per battle. Sure, I get it. But when you don't give the option to use any of them because they don't exist, that's kind of stupid, right? Like if it was a once per battle thing where over the course of the turn, you roll dice and you gain these power points, whatever, for accomplishing these things, and then you get to choose one of your heroes gets either of these benefits. Either one of your guys gains the glory and turns into a demon prince, or one of them fully heals or something. That would be a better rule for me.
Yeah.
Once per battle, you can do this by once you've achieved this many points, choose a living hero.
Yep.
They become a demon prince or something.
Yeah, it should just be something that your army earns.
Right. I shouldn't have to specify which guy is particularly going to go accomplish anything and tell my opponent, hey, you're going to want to kill this guy first because he might get a tiny bit
or
better.
Just never let him fight or whatever. Right. Yeah.
It's like most of the time you just ignore that rule because it's not going to come up.
Nope.
I mean, just like the apotheosis happened before, you never rolled a double 6 or whatever to get apotheosis to happen on your guy anyway. And then once you did, you were only a touch better.
And then not to repeat this, but why then waste such flavorful and interesting rules on the spearhead that's coming out and don't even put anything close to it?
Yeah, not even have your own army of renown for it or anything, right? that even is remotely close to it. It's just we'll just let that live in spearhead.
Yeah.
Whereas every other spearhead had rules that were similar to what units do in the full game, but usually toned back. It was usually the other way around, where it was this unit does more in AOS than it does in spearhead.
You had individual unit exceptions. Putrid Blight Kings did more in spearhead than they do in the core game, but not the army.
Right.
Yeah. And so that was how they made up for that. Well, it was these Dark Oath units and their rules in spearhead are incredible. They look so good. 0 of that is in the AOS side. So that's a weird reversal of. It's they spent all the time designing the Dark Oath Spearhead more recently, is what it feels like. And Battletomes going forward may end up more like that Dark Oath Spearhead, and we'll be stuck with this very vanilla.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Now we have seen Games Workshop doesn't let an army just sit like that. If that's the case, they usually come up with a patch of sorts for them, like they did for AdMech, like they did for whatever.
Drukari got a big one. Sisters, I think, got a big update.
Yeah,
that helped fix them. Custodes.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. 40K, as a good example of them being proactive in their changes and doing the changes outside of normal
release
rotation,
schedule. Yeah,
which is great because that means you don't have to wait a full edition with battle rules. You get to actually play your army midway through, basically.
Yeah,
because it will get changed.
Pretty much every army gets the chance to play in a way that's enjoyable within an edition, but we need them to do that in AOS if it turns out that slaves are in fact like what we're guessing.
I feel like my judgment's not awful.
Nope.
And I just don't see
and if
where
it is,
the power is.
We'll say so.
Right. I don't see where the power comes from.
No.
I have all the units. I'm intimately familiar with what the units do, and a lot of what made Chosen and Knights and Varangard very good is that you could farm some easy marks of chaos,
right,
and snowball that into the late game.
Yep.
not having any of that
because you were always gonna be outnumbered with that army,
right.
and so you had to make these singular units that could grow in power throughout the game because they were going to be the only ones left anyway in your army. And now I don't know if I liked that as their way to play.
No, I hated that. I actually disliked that part of it where it's like, oh, well, my chosen are now rend -4.
Right.
With a ward save and and +3 to run in.
And they're healing every turn, and they're doing one unit is doing everything.
Yeah. So I did not care for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like this is nothing.
Right.
Like this is almost
now it's not even that.
Almost nothing.
Yeah.
It's just, man, it's rough.
Yeah, and it's like so it reminds me of was it 8th edition where Genestealer Cult had a run for like a month. And but it wasn't egregious. It was they won a single major event, and then they got the Nerf bat to unlike any we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was so weird.
Yeah, and it was like they rerouted the upcoming release of the Space Marine Codex because they got a second one that edition to really be anti-Genestealer Cult in a way that. In all but specifically naming Genestealer Cult and what the units did.
Right.
They wiped out anything Genestealer Cults did, and they gave Genestealer Cults a nerf to some of their characters and their units, and then they gave them a points increase. And now this doesn't feel quite like that, but it's almost like 8 months ago or whatever at the end of 3rd, and then maybe early in 4th, slaves had some success. And so it's like they were like, well, we got to do something about that. Here's a vanilla version when they're not even winning right now.
Now, see, if I had to guess, I would have guessed this version would have been Index, and the Index version they have right now would have been the books version.
Yeah,
and it's not. Like,
yep.
Did they develop them both and then release them in the wrong order, or did they forget that they were nixing this version of it?
Was it 2 ideas they were working on at the same time and just picked one?
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, it's rough
because they weren't even in need of like a power down. What they needed was like.
Hey, your boons from your Eye of the Gods don't stack.
Right.
If you get a new Eye of the Gods, you can choose to roll. If you get a new one, it replaces your old one. Problem solved. Problem solved. And then it's like, oh, well, you want to keep the Eye of the Gods you had before? Okay, well, don't even roll then.
Yeah.
You like the one you get? Keep it.
Well, because, the Chaos Gods are fickle. And I don't like rules that, like, punish a player for playing their own army. But there's, like, there was a... in Magic the Gathering, they've done this, where there's a card that'll say, like at the beginning of your upkeep or whatever, choose one of the following. You can't pick one that's been chosen before, and one of the last options is like the creature dies or you lose the game or whatever. Now, that's dramatic. The idea is you're supposed to win or have a market advantage before you get to that last choice, or you find a way to donate it to the opponent so they lose, Well, with this, what they could have done is, just like you're saying, they can't stack, so if you've gotten this one before, you get nothing or you re-roll or whatever, come up with something there.
Or it could have been, instead of every single unit that killed something this turn gets a roll, say, choose a unit that killed at least one model this turn.
Right.
They get to roll in the Eye of the Gods table. Yep. Make it a once per turn per army kind of thing, instead of every unit gets to do this. Because that's what the bullshit was. Yeah. 4 units fight, 4 models die, we all get an Eye of the Gods.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Yeah, and so the army lived and died by it, literally. Mm-hmm. And then again, they were vastly outnumbered because you had to play Chosen and or Varangard because they could automatically kill something, but they were both also kind of slow given their respective categories, and so there was just that chance they didn't get to do what you needed them to do, and the army just lost wholesale. So I wasn't excited about it, but it actually felt stronger than what we're getting as a replacement,
right?
Which is bad.
And now maybe the stats on Chosen and maybe the stats on Varangard are still so good that they don't need to have those buffs, and they'll be able to compete.
But what about Warriors? What about Dark Oath? Right. What about all the other stuff? I want to play the other stuff.
Those guys didn't get any points changes.
No.
Dark Oath Savagers got a points decrease, but the normal Dark Oath
Marauders
got nothing. The Cavalry got nothing. The Warriors, who relied on their Mark of Chaos, got nothing. No points changes there. Yeah. They didn't get any better.
Nope.
Like, what?
Yeah.
I don't get it. Oh, Archeon got better because he came down 20 points. From 860 down to 840.
But lost his marks, by the way.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, what? I don't get it. I don't understand the thought process there. And just the fact that there are models in your army that do not benefit from your army rules, let alone your faction leaders.
Yeah.
Like, I get it if it was like, oh, well, you're Stormcast, and you've got these abilities that say Warrior Chamber or whatever, and oh, your doggos, your beasts, your Griffhounds, you don't get to benefit from this really cool ability for Stormcast models. Because you're not Warrior Chamber.
Right.
You're just little beasts, your little companions.
Bird
so
dogs
you don't get to
yeah.
benefit. I get it. Fine. Oh, Eye of the Gods and Dark Apotheosis doesn't work on a Chaos spawn or on Furies or things like that. It's like, yeah, okay, fine. I get that. But when it's like, hey, Archaon, fuck you. You don't get to benefit from your army's own rules.
Yeah.
Or if it was like, hey, Archaon, you embody this army. You get all of these rules anyway, so you don't get to benefit from the army's rules in the book. But no, he has no abilities on his war scroll that in any way reflect anything the army does.
Nope.
It's just like, this is so disconnected. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Also, give us $60, please, if you want to keep playing.
Also,
it hurts. It really hurts. I saw a guy doing a review, and he's like, so here's what you can do. You can use your existing data cards for the index. You just can't use these two because these units are gone. But everything else is still valid. So don't even buy the new cards.
Yeah.
It's like, man, that is grim. That sucks. Oh, they made changes to all the other artifacts and spell lores and stuff and everything. No, those are all exactly the same. You get 3 of each, and they're exactly the same as they are in the index. Come on, guys. Just come on.
So they swapped out one card, and they eliminated 2 others. There's your army.
Yeah. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It feels rough.
And it's usually one of those when like changes happen, they're significant enough that we're like, well, I don't see it. This is like, well, the changes weren't.
Magakin, I did not see the benefit of Magakin.
Yeah.
Their army rules sucked, in my opinion, when it first came out.
Well, they haven't performed well, so you were right.
Yes, but it actually, they had performed better than I had thought, because when they first revealed their index, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, this is horrible. It is still bad, but it's not as bad as I thought.
Yeah.
There was like they're still performing in like the 48% win rate or something. Like,
yeah, they gave them an extra rule and they lowered the points, and now
Yeah.
they're okay. But so there is our example of what they could do if it turns out this new Slaves is really weak. Stormcast and Skaven are both performing, but that can even be by virtue of the new models they got are good enough.
yeah, they're statted really well.
And so, but Slaves didn't get any new models. They got a reprint of an existing model, and that one is it. They lost 3 units.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
4. Lost 4 units.
4 units.
Yep.
Which I'm okay with old models going away if you make good enough rules and or replace it with something. And then their rules just came straight across with their army rule getting weaker objectively. So I have a feeling that it won't be long before they have to Magotkin these guys or Drukhari these guys, and like, we have to give you something because you're down at like 41%
I hope
for a
it's
while.
worse than that.
I hope it's just embarrassing.
I do. I hope that
just in the red.
It's just impossible for them to win, and so you see like a 4% win rate. Just something.
Not
awful.
even that lucky scrub matchup.
Not even enough of like stats to like be like, oh well, it really doesn't matter how the opponent rolls, you will lose.
Yep.
Like, this is a
Why
dice
not?
game, but even if you have awful dice, you still beat this army.
On average, you still beat them.
Yeah.
In a showdown. Yeah. Side note, to the books that end up useless, but you have to buy them to play. So Parabellum makes Conquest. The
Yes.
Warhammer Fantasy, not Warhammer Fantasy.
Right. 42 mil scale, 40 mil scale, whatever it is.
38. 38. Yeah, it's large. And so I guess they update their rules frequently, their core rules, and they will print a book like almost every time, but it will be invalid for like 3 to 6 months because they'll change the core rules again like 3 months after this new book gets printed. So Moose was today like trying to like liquidate some stuff he had when they were cleaning out the corner where the old land center used to be. And there was a Conquest book in there. It was really nice. It was like soft cover, it had silver inlaid. And he's like, hey, do you want this one? And Josh is like, which one is that? It's like, it was like the 3rd or 4th one this edition that they've printed because they changed the rules and then print a new book for it. but then it was already invalid because the rules changed again, like shortly after. That's the story I got anyway. And it was like, oh man. But their rules are also available online anyway.
So why even make books?
Hey. Why print a book?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one thing when it's like a game like Pathfinder or D&D where you have that book for the entirety of an edition of the game, and it's loose anyway because it's role-playing. When you're talking about tabletop and there's a lot of technical things going on, that printed paper is just so wasted. Even for the fancy art and the galleries and the schemes and the faction heraldry and all that stuff that is useful, for a rule book, it's not.
Right.
Just a giant waste. And stop putting it behind a paywall.
I know.
That said, I'm still going to pay for it.
I know.
They got me.
I know.
They got me.
I know.
That's right. You're hearing us admit to our hypocrisy as gamers.
I can complain about it as much as I want, but as long as they keep doing it, I still keep paying for it. They're going to keep doing it.
They got me.
Damn.
So we don't know. Wait, we do know what we're kicking off the next year with.
Yes. Gloomspite
Gets and
Auric War Clans.
And Auric War Clans.
Which are combined.
And Astra Militarum on the 40K side. And great models.
And it sounds like they're going to be doing Death Watch again.
Maybe.
It was weird. So there was in part of the preview, they hinted at the fact that Death Watch was getting rolled into Imperial agents, and then now they are their own thing again.
Right. So there's one thing that we haven't really discussed, and I don't think it was rumored. I think GW officially said so. There is a great big balanced data slate coming for 40K within a few weeks. We're in December, right?
Yep.
And I've heard some people murmuring, including some folks at the store today. I don't know if they got wind of what's coming. I didn't hear many specifics. I was in and out. But they expect Imperial agents in particular to go through a massive change. And because currently they have no core army rule at all.
Right, because the Imperial agents right now is you bring an Imperial Inquisitor contingent of guys, and then you get to ally them based on which Xena or which Ordo they're from with a specific sub-army.
Yeah.
You either bring
Sororitas or Custodians. Yeah. Right.
But they don't have army rules in their own to span the chosen army.
Nope.
And one of them was Ordo Xenos, which was kill teams of Death Watch that weren't going to be their own army anymore. They were only going to be this, and then they changed that to now be their own army.
Well, and then the Sororitas and Custodians in Imperial Ages were just straight up worse than their standalone version. So it was a really odd execution. They made that decision to give them an army of their own, and then it seemed like it was written in a weekend. I don't know. I don't like to think that, but so a big change coming to them could be like what we saw with AdMech, where they're getting
new detachments.
New set of rules.
Here's
basically
4 new detachments for each of the Ordos, and you get these rules when you bring models in this detachment.
Yeah,
I could absolutely see that.
Or they might bust it back up, which would be that would be so. I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be a mistake. Like I don't think we've ever seen them make. Where within the same edition, within months, they're like, just kidding.
Scratch this. I know you bought the book. We're going to keep your money, but we're changing your army entirely now that you bought it. Now it's going to be a single allied detachment of these Imperial agents that you can bring.
Right.
And you add it to these other armies instead of
so Sororitas can buy one,
leaders.
And Custodians can buy one, and now Death Watch, who may have their own thing again, can buy one.
Right. And then Grey Knights can bring one.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. It's weird.
And so that was a rumor, is that this massive update is going to include some Imperial Agent stuff that admitting to a very unsuccessful venture for that. Did we talk about the results of World?
No. I mean, we have. Not on here.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, for those who didn't know, the World Championships of Warhammer took place in Atlanta, Georgia, and all of their games are showcased there. And they do a great big grand narrative thing that has become wildly popular.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's about. I don't know exactly what
I think basically they set up a scenario, and then you fight towards, kind of like they did with the summer campaigns. Mm-hmm. You fight towards the outcome of the grand narrative.
Okay.
Just play games to contribute your victories or defeats towards the outcome.
And those the players the last 2 years in particular have become fanatic about that thing. They get massive turnout for the grand narrative, and these are the people who show up wearing the costumes. Like they show up. They show up wearing, you get that some content creator who shows up in the Battle Sister attire, and someone who shows up like the Space Marine, and someone like incredible stuff. And the costumes get better. Like they don't just look like foam board and whatever.
Right.
And so good for that. I don't know what it's about. It's awesome that that's a big thing now. But then, of course, the feature matches are all the 40K champs and the Age of Sigmar champs. And I don't know if there are many surprises in the results, but who was it? Astra Militarum?
Yeah.
They pulled off the 40K one. And then Stormcast, Golden Boys, took home the Age of Sigmar. Stormcast have been performing a little better than I expected. I think because the index, they seemed vanilla, and then the book didn't bring much more, just put in the new units. And I don't know if you had given me thoughts on if they were strong or not, but it does seem like one of the named dragon.
I mean, both the named dragons are really good.
I think they're seeing play.
But the biggest thing is just the new chamber,
Or no, Custodes won the
Ruination.
40K one.
Yeah. Astra Militarum got second. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, poor John Lennon has come runner-up twice in a row. So,
or as like we like to call it, first loser.
So, I mean,
not to say. No, I'm sorry. That is an inside joke.
It is. Yeah.
We had a buddy who was trying to qualify. I got to clarify this because John Lennon's an amazing player. I need to clarify.
I mean,
we had a buddy who went to a tournament to try to qualify for the Worlds of Star Wars Legion, and he had been trying for 3 years to try to get an invite in, and he was getting better, and he had perfected his list essentially, and he'd gotten second place like 3 or 4 times in a row.
Yeah,
and failed to get the invite, and then he went to a tournament where they had too many people, so they couldn't have a clean, top person, but they didn't have enough people to give out a second invite, and he goes undefeated in this tournament.
Yeah.
But because his strength of schedule or his victory points or whatever wasn't high enough, as an undefeated player, he got second and didn't get the invite.
Yeah.
And instead, they gave him a trophy that said first loser on it.
Yeah.
Fucking A, is that an insult?
Yeah.
So we make it a joke that whenever someone pulls off an amazing accomplishment, like getting second place in a tournament, calling them first loser as like a joke, haha, isn't that hilarious? It's like, no, it's not hilarious.
Right.
That is so insulting.
And in the case of like John Lennon, it's like he's a guy who, if you follow 40K, is no stranger to making the top tables late in an event. He's finished runner-up at Worlds twice in a row. That's, first of all, incredible that you go that deep at Worlds twice in a row. Unfortunate that you didn't bring home the trophy for all of them.
That you make it to the top table and you don't win.
Yeah,
like that's woof.
It's tough. It's the start. It's the makings of the Buffalo Bills in the '90s syndrome. 4 Super Bowls in a row that they didn't win. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it was surprising to me because Astra Militarum right now, who doesn't have their codex yet.
Well, it was surprising to me because both of those armies are not supposed to be the top armies right now, and yet they're the ones that matched up against each other.
Well, an Astra Militarum is performing better than it feels like they should. Mm-hmm. They're performing really well because there were like 5 events in a 2-weekend period, 2 GTs, and then the Worlds events, and Astra Militarum was like top. Custodes, though, that is out of left field. We had heard they were dead. We heard they were overpriced. They couldn't win any objective games.
Not enough bodies. Can't accomplish any objectives.
They have their rules are really weak, and like and this guy goes and wins Worlds, and it sounds like he played his ass off. I mean, because I thought for sure when we had announced the finals is our group chat, Astra Militarum versus Custodes, everyone was like, oh, Astra Militarum is going to win, and it's John Lennon. And then I was like, nope, this other guy wins with Custodes. On the Age of Sigmar side, it was Ossiarch Bone Reapers versus Stormcast. Sounds like it was a close game. I don't know what the current Bone Reapers lists look like.
So, I mean, right now in AOS, it is a lot of named characters. Named characters are the only ones really worth playing that can actually do stuff on their own.
Because, again, they have a huge pile of rules.
Absolutely. Yeah. Catacross is an amazing character, and I believe Catacross was in that list.
Yeah, it was Catacross, Cavalos, Death Riders, Morghast Archai, Mortek Crawler, Mortison Ossifector, and a Mortek crawler. But yeah, Catacross is
very elite version of that army.
Yeah, it is few units.
So you've got the horseman leader with some horsemen. You've got Catacross. You've got a unit of the very elite 2-man. Which was the Archai.
Yeah.
And then a couple.
And they were reinforced.
And then a couple of catapults.
So that's a Death Star.
Yeah. A couple of catapults. Mortek crawlers.
Yeah.
And that's an elite.
And whatever the Terratic cohort, 140 points. Is that an Underworld's warband?
Terratic cohort. I don't know what that is. I don't know. Maybe. I thought most of the Underworld's warbands were legends. So if it is, maybe they allowed them at Worlds. That'd be wild. Maybe one of them escaped Legends, and so they were allowed to be used.
So on the plus side, it used the Horrors of the Necropolis manifestation, not one of the ones we're used to seeing. And then the Stormcast list. So this one ran Krondys. I saw another grand tournament that was won by Karazai.
Yeah.
That one ran Karazai and what's his name?
Selson Prime.
Skeletor.
Oh, yeah, I've run Ionis. Yeah. So I will say that when I went Dragon Lance, call it, in the tournament that I came first loser in, I was Dragon heavy and I went Karandus.
Yeah.
No, I went Karazai, the wizard. No, Karandus? Which one's the wizard? I went the wizard one. I think it's Karandus. Plus Ionis, plus a Stardrake, and then my Stormdrake Guard.
Yeah.
So like I brought all of them too, and they are very good.
Yeah, this one was Krondys, and then just Paladors, Raptors. That's the whole list.
Yeah, Paladors are very good. Paladors are good, and I'll tell you why.
And they use Starstrike javelins, if that means.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah, both are very good. Both versions. I like the melee ones, the Starstrike axes, mostly because they are the most cost-effective heavy infantry in the game. They are damage 2 weapons on their axes, damage 3 when they charge, and there's 3 models in the unit, and they're big health pools, and they have the Stormcast 3-up save. They are just very, very cost-effective. The javelins, I believe, allow you to shoot after you charge, so you're not really giving up. You're basically just getting kind of an early round of fighting before anyone fights, because you can shoot, charge, shoot again, and then fight all in the same turn, which offsets the sort of one of the downfalls of shooting versus a melee option of a unit. Because in melee, you get to fight every turn, not just on your own turn, whereas the shooting is just on your turn. But this allows you to get an extra round of shooting before you actually do your fighting. So both versions are good. I can see if you were going a more mid-range, you don't want to be in melee, you want to score objectives kind of army, that the javelins are definitely a preferred way.
And they reinforced them both, and then
6-man unit, it's pretty solid.
Now the Raptors, they split. They did Hurricane crossbows for one and Long Strike crossbows for the other.
They both have very different roles in the army. So before, Long Strike crossbows were just straight up better. Like, because they used to be like the same cost, and they used to shoot further and do more damage, and everything was more reliable. They got crit mortal wounds, all this stuff. Now, each one wants to target different things. I actually really like the Hurricane crossbows because they get so many shots. Every hit, I believe, is 2 hits whenever they shoot, and then they get rend versus cavalry, I think was their special rule. They have a very specific target they want to shoot at, but it's just forcing saves. They force so many saves on that unit. So if you're fighting things with low saves, high numbers, that is just the superior option. Whereas like the Long Strike crossbows are very expensive and they want to snipe out characters is their biggest benefit. Not a huge advantage, So I can see getting a little bit of all of it. I think going elite in this edition is actually very advantageous than going wide.
Which, circling back, is how slaves kind of played.
Yep, that's true. But it makes it feel bad when it's like, I do want to play kind of a horde army of lower power guys. And now it's just like you kind of can't. You're kind of like punished for it a little bit.
Right, because that opposing expensive elite unit of 6 can wipe out your 2 20-man blobs. Like, yeah.
Plus, you have to paint them all. You have to buy them all.
So many things
you have to move
assemble.
them all. It takes too long to move them all.
Yeah.
I'll just play a few models that are just overpowered.
Yeah. How can I just play 18 models instead, right? And
18's a lot, actually. 12 models is about.
That's a horde.
No. So that Stormcast army, I think, was that. I don't know if the crossbows were reinforced.
Yeah,
but that's
all of them.
All of them were.
All 4 units were reinforced.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what 6 times 4, 24, 25, 26 models, 27 models. Not a lot. But yeah.
No. And it doesn't look.
No. 4 Arachai, a unit of Death Riders, and 5 or 10 of them, plus a character, plus 2 catapults, and is 3.
And then whatever that unit was, we couldn't figure out.
310. That might be the one of the Warcry warbands. Maybe it's the one with the guy with the halberd, Morton Cannon. No, maybe it's the new one with like the Centaur guys.
It might be.
I don't know.
But all I know is with a name like that, it's got to be one of those like you can only take in an army things. But yeah, and it looked like it was pretty close. So
who ended up winning? Was it Stormcast?
Stormcast did.
Yeah. The wizard, wizard dragon is so good because he's got a bonus to cast, a bonus of 2, which is huge on his 2 spells.
Yep.
And then just the fact that you can you can take advantage of both the spell lords and the prayer lords because you've got Ionis and you've got Karazai. It's like you get to benefit from kind of all of the Stormcast's special rules in some way.
You know what's interesting though is, so 2 things. One, now Worlds was in their U.S. Open format where they're using Games Workshop scenarios and maps for the battlefield layout in both 40K and Age of Sigmar. I've heard people grumble that they don't consider those realistic results because everyone else uses like the ITC
Tough
ones.
Shit.
I'm getting to that. Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Excuse my outburst.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. So ITC will use the same scenarios, but ITC will do things depending on the event, such as like player place terrain or whatever. Yeah. Now, I would argue that the U.S. Open events and Worlds are the way to do it, or at least they're the more official result, because this is the game that they intended. And so when people think the results are skewed because they're going by the GW things, it's like, yeah, but you get like more balanced results,
right?
Which means they know what they're doing.
You don't get to place your terrain for your own advantage,
right?
You know, like while that might seem fair,
right?
Because I can see it both ways, right? So the player place terrain is fair because you can set up your own half of the board to be as advantageous as possible for the army that you're bringing, and if you block yourself in or you screw something up, it's all on you.
Yep.
Same for your opponent. If they mess themselves up and they block their units in, they
don't close the right lane, and
it's their own fault.
Yep.
However, I feel like you should know how to play the game and play around whatever terrain setup you have available. And having a terrain setup that is locked in exactly the same, essentially, for every single player playing that round, I feel like you're playing on the same battlefield as everyone else, so there is no advantage from the battlefield.
Right. It's like, and here's the thing, I am okay with, and Games Workshop has expressed that they are okay with both existing.
Right.
So, their maps are set up to be almost like StarCraft for those who played that, where you'd go to play multiplayer against somebody random online, and every map was set up so it was mirrored symmetrical. And when you look at Games Workshop's terrain layouts in both Age of Sigmar and 40K, and their chapter approved or their General's Handbook, the terrain layouts are like that, mirrored, symmetrical. And then some of the ITC events will do the player placed, and now it's different.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, so for anyone who is familiar with tennis, which I can't imagine too many people who listen are.
I've heard of it.
I think it's a sport still, right? Well, they have different seasons that are on different surfaces. So you have like a hard court season, a clay court season, and a grass court season. Well, all of those surfaces, the ball behaves very different, the player movement's very different, and so you have to learn how to play on each of those a different way.
Right.
On clay court, you have to expect the ball is going to move slower, it's going to be heavier, it's going to pick up that dirt. You have to learn how to slide to get to the shot. On grass, however, the ball is going to skid super low like a rock skimming across the water. You have to learn to play that way. If you don't, you're going to get blown out on one and succeed in the other. I think to play now in Warhammer, you have to learn how to play both ways. You can't just practice player place terrain all the time, right, or you're going to go to these U.S. Opens and get blown out.
Player place terrain for me would be like, okay, well, I prefer to play on grass. So every time I play tennis, I'm switching my surface on my side of the net.
Right.
I'm switching it to grass.
Yeah.
And you can switch yours to whatever kind you want to.
Yep.
And it's just like, It's not.
No, yeah.
That seems less official to me.
But the best ones learn how to do it on all of them.
Exactly.
Right? We witnessed the end of an era in tennis, for those who follow, of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, the big three, the most successful tennis players of all time.
Oh, yeah, the big three of tennis. Yep.
They learned how to play on every surface and won on every surface. And that's why they were that good. And in 40K, at least, in Age of Sigmar, I'm not as familiar with the big players yet, but there are regulars who are on the ITC standings. Those same players show up at every event at the top because they learn how to play both ways. And you have to learn how to play with...
I don't think AOS does much of the player plays terrain yet. I don't think we've adopted that.
There's not that much terrain on the board.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's as big, but some places have had unique terrain rules.
Sure, yeah.
And so, but you got to learn how to play them all. You got to practice both ways. You got to practice as the way the map is, as GW intends. You got to practice with player plays. Depends on what event's coming up for you. So... but we're seeing that some of these players, like John Lennon, are good at any of them. And kudos to the Custodes player for whatever it was he did to pull all of that off. And then kudos to the Stormcast player. And the reason I say that is because Night Haunt began AOS 4 kind of hot. And not kind of hot, they were. And they were like the boogeyman, every pun intended. And when they got kind of a nerf...
it was a pretty big nerf. It's unarguably a nerf.
Yeah, I mean, when their army-wide rule that was way too good got relegated to a unit, which is fair.
Great. Yep.
And then some of their points fluctuated. Nighthaunt are still doing just fine. They're now where they're probably supposed to be. Everyone who was talking about that change expected immediately Lumineth Realm Lords were getting no nerfs. And they were already really good. Mm-hmm. They expected them to be too good. And maybe on paper they are, and we just haven't seen it yet. But at Worlds, it was like Stormcast came to play, and they punched like 3 tickets into the top 8. So sometimes the changes that are made to the game that we think automatically make room for one thing is just not how it plays out. And it could be because these guys, practice for the specific tournament. So it was good to see Stormcast because Golden Boys haven't been good in a while. They might have to change something so that not everybody's playing a big dragon or whatever. But I don't know.
Every list I play has at least one big dragon in it because dragons are cool.
But you know what? When you talked earlier about they got rid of like the wizard sanct of the army.
Yeah.
They want them to be an elite army. Well, they really feel like it now, and that's working for them. And you can do elite cavalry or elite dragons or whatever, and it seems to be good for them. Encouraged for Bone Reapers, but because they haven't been good in a minute.
Yeah, they need more releases besides what they started with. They need more. They need to fill out their roster.
Agreed.
But that's most armies in AOS right now. Most armies are losing things and not gaining anything. That's every army right now. I mean, even Stormcast, who got a bunch of new releases, they are still net down.
Yeah.
Skaven, who got a bunch of new releases, are net down. They lost more than they gained. They got a lot of resculpts.
Yeah.
But most of the number of actual war scrolls they have is reduced.
Mm-hmm. And it's clean, but there's like the rosters are for many armies are pretty small now.
Yeah.
Which lends itself towards one way to play. And even when that's good, that's not fun.
Right.
We talk about that even with like video games we've kept up with, right? Where it's like Diablo 4, for example. It's like, well, if you want to farm on Torment 4, you got to play Spiritborn. Otherwise, you really can't.
You can't. And in this latest patch, if you follow it, they wanted to not fix the bugs of the Spiritborn class, but make the other classes better so that they could also compete in Torment 4.
Right.
But I don't think if you said, hey, Spiritborn, we're nerfing you, so you're not doing 4 billion quadrillion damage with a hit because you're taking advantage of a bug.
Right.
And we're bringing you back in line of actual real damage, but not nerfing your class. Mm-hmm. I think that would be fair.
Yep.
It's kind of bullshit. I know it's a PvE game, but people get an advantage playing PvE while there's trading involved and when there's leaderboards by playing a broken, bugged class that can outperform other classes.
I'll put it to you this way. I took my sorcerer who can, and I don't know why we're talking about Diablo, but whatever.
I don't know.
But who can, we'll circle it back, I'm sure. I can go through Torment 3 with ease, where I can almost get to like not work hard mode and get through most of the Torment 3 runs I need to. Torment 4, my character just insta-dies so often. Well, and one guy offered, he was like, do you have summoning mats for Duriel? Because Duriel and Andariel are the 2 Uber bosses who are most likely to drop mythics. They have a 1.5% drop rate. And that's at any Torment difficulty. The difference is that if you're playing like Torment 1, 2, and 3, they only drop 2 or 3 items. Mm-hmm. So you got to play them 50 times to get... Well, they drop like 8 items when you play Torment 4. So it starts to get a little... But when I tried to play a single boss run on Torment 4, the damage I was doing was so little that eventually they go through enough animations that they get you. And this guy was like, well, I'll take you on a Duriel run. I was like, okay. So I went with him because I traded him some stuff that he wanted. And so we go to the Duriel run.
Is he a Spiritborn?
He's a Spiritborn.
Okay.
Here's the thing. He's 100 Paragon levels below me. He has 0 mythics on his build.
Uh-huh.
I dropped the summoning materials
into the pot. Here comes Duriel.
Duriel comes out of the ground. He doesn't even do his opening animation pre-health bar barf. The Spiritborn kills him.
Neat.
One shot.
Hardest difficulty.
Hundreds of billions of damage. Insta-dead Uber boss.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. His death animation took longer than the fight.
Like, why do you need me to trade you stuff? Why are you not farming this? You one-shot everything.
Yeah. He just wanted some runes for something, and I had them. And then I was like, okay. So then I was like, I've got like 20 minutes before I have to get to a Thanksgiving.
He's like, no problem. I got like 20 seconds.
He's like, we'll do like 7 more runs. So we did. And it was the same thing. It was just summon, dead. Summon, no animation, dead. Now, you can't quite do it with Andariel because she has a forced animation that happens when her health gets so low. It's same with like Lilith where they have a forced animation. But like, so that's why they do the Duriel run, because he doesn't. He just dies. If you take too long, he burrows in the ground and the mini ones come up and you have to deal with that whole thing.
Just kill him.
But they just, he comes out of the ground and dies. He didn't even get to do anything. I just would put up like my barrier when the barf happened if it got that far. Mm-hmm. So I didn't insta-die. And then he'd kill him. Now, we did it, and we actually went through 20 runs in total.
Jesus Christ.
It took about 4 minutes. And I did get a mythic to drop. Mm-hmm. It was one that was totally useless to me, unfortunately. And he was just, that's just the game. Unfortunately, they made a class that is way too good, and it's the only one that can consistently farm on T4.
Yeah. But again, it's too good because there is a weird overstacking multiplicative bug with a couple of abilities and a couple of way things stack.
Well, and so the class can literally one button farm. Yeah. It pushes one button because you'll see them before the boss comes up where they're just shooting these feathers in a Nova, and then the thing comes up and dies.
Yeah.
Now, anyway.
But the fact that they chose not to fix it, like not nerf the class, but fix the bug, and they just gave some like 4% increase damage here and there to different classes, it's like that is not equivalent. If you changing a damage is of 75% of your attack damage up to 125% of your attack damage,
right?
Change base damage, is that going to increase my damage by 40 quadrillion %? No, because that's what this class is doing.
And further, so they did say that season 7, which comes in January, they are going to dramatically nerf the Spiritborn. And they want to bring up the other classes. But at the same time, they're adding a whole new layer of grind with the witchcraft system, which is another gripe. This is to say, back to Warhammer, when you make something that's like the only way you can really farm right now at the highest level is you have to play this class built this way, otherwise you're just not going to have fun. I don't want my armies in Warhammer to be, you have to play this one build,
right?
Otherwise you're not going to have fun,
right? Or
you're not going to win, or whichever your goal is. And I know we're only our first book in to the new edition past
it's
the starter.
It's the
third book, including the starting armies.
Yeah.
But it sort of, Stormcast have more variety by virtue of sheer number of war scrolls, but they're kind of getting pigeonholed into like, because even the other one we saw, that one in 89 Blair GT, it was just the other named Dragon Prince.
Yeah.
With a different kind of cavalry.
Yeah.
But it's still the Dragon plus cavalry. And then Ossiarchs, like Fire Slayers, their roster's so small that you really can only play them one way. Slaves are now not succeeding at all since their points increase. But when they were, it was one way to build it. You played Be'lakor, you played Chosen, you played Varangard. I don't want that to be this book.
Right.
You're either playing Bellacor's Army of Renown or you're playing the same units you were before because they're stats.
Which is weird about Bellacor's Army of Renown, by the way, is it's not just bring demons. It's you can bring these specific demons. Mm-hmm. It's just really weird.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you want to play Be'lakor? Well, you can bring Slaanesh, but all you have access to is Fiends and Hellflayers.
Yep.
What?
Right.
You don't have access to
Demonettes?
Demonettes? Anything else? Just those two. Yep. Weird. Okay, if you want to bring Khorne, what do I get? Well, you get Bloodletters and you get nothing.
It's one of the cavalry.
Blood Crushers, maybe? That'd be interesting.
Might be it.
But it's just like a really weird, limited roster.
Yeah, you get Plague Bearers or Beasts, I think was the Nurgle one.
Yeah. It's like, that's odd. That you limited it. Like, why are these the only demons that are allying themselves with Be'lakor? That is weird.
Yeah.
Very weird. I mean, maybe it's for balance purposes or whatever, but I don't know.
I mean, they had to limit it because, like I said, he's so good on his own, and if you're going to have him fretting away wounds and rules and whatever, because he'll have his own army rule. That's the thing with Armies of Renown.
But with an Army of Renown, you don't gain that plus your other army rules.
Nope.
This replaces them.
Yeah, you replace it.
So I would be okay if you had a bigger roster of demons because you replace their rules.
Yeah, it's not like he can Dark Apotheosis.
And it's got its own... it's got its own data sheet.
Yeah.
War scrolls that are... This is a Legion of the First Prince Demon Flayer.
Yep.
Whatever Flayer. Doom Flayer. Hell Flayer. Whatever it is.
Back hair Flayer.
So it's not even affected by the fact that if Slaanesh gets its own book down the line and they get their own version of the Hell Flayer, it's not Bellacor's Hell Flayer.
Right.
He doesn't get an updated version of it. He has this version. So it's like, why not just have more options? It's weird.
Yeah. I guess next week we'll get a better look at the not very changed book.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we're still going to get it. Not going to be happy about it.
Still going to get it. Now they're also releasing that mini version with the pack of cards.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
But one thing I wondered about the cards, they look smaller.
Yeah.
I would almost prefer smaller cards. Why don't I have the option to buy those with my regular book?
I know. Doesn't make any sense.
Here's two products
Figure it out.
that you have to spend money on that are going to be invalidated.
Get your finger out of your
figure out. While we're on that video game, Space Marine 2 has their first big update coming.
Yep. Maybe I'll start playing it again.
You get the Dark Angels aesthetic, and then you get the new operation.
So I wasn't happy. So they added a new gun to the game, but it was specifically for the Defender class, the shield one, whatever that's called, Bulwark, Protector.
Bulwark.
Which is the Volkite, whatever, Neo-Volkite pistol that the Blade Guard veterans have.
Mm-hmm.
They added that because people were asking for it. But it's like, hey, I play a Vanguard class, which is the Phobos Marines grapnel launcher.
Yep.
Either your Reaver / that one.
The right? Reaver.
Yeah, the Phobos. And it's like, hey, motherfuckers, why don't I have any options at all? Because here's my class's option. Do you want a combat knife? Do you want a chainsword?
I mean, obviously you take 8 knives, right?
I mean, if I could take more knives, I would. But I get those 2 pistols, or those 2 melee weapons. My pistol option is, hey, do you want a heavy bolt pistol? Or do you want a heavy bolt pistol? I get 0 options as this class. You get nothing. Yeah, you can take a gun like a, you've got 3 different kinds of bolter, 4 different kinds of bolters you can take. You take the Stalker, you can take the rapid fire carbine, you can take a normal bolter. But it's like, where's my other weapon? Why can't I take a different pistol? Why can't I take a power sword with this class? We are not beholden to what the Reaver unit can take in the game of 40K. You know what I mean? Like, why can I not have more? Why can't I take a power fist or a lightning claw? Anything. I mean, lightning claws aren't in the game yet. I'm aware of that. But, like, why not? Why not give a different weapon option? Why can't I be a Reaver with a thunder hammer? You know what I mean? Like, what's the reasoning here? I don't get it.
Well,
so that's where I stalled out. I can only play so many of those operations as the same exact class with the same exact build because I have no other options.
Well, and beyond that, if they wanted each build to feel different, all of the other classes have way more options than the Reaver, than the Phobos does.
The heavy weapon guy is fucking awesome because he has so many different heavy guns he can choose from. Like, he's got a really cool like shield ability where he can block when he's shooting and stuff. The Reaver has... hey, you better be good at parrying.
Right.
And also, the grapnel is one of the best abilities in the game. I will say that. The grapnel launcher is freaking cool. But that's all you do. You're just Spider-Manning your way around the battlefield, kicking people. and executing them. That's all you do. I don't even shoot. I just fight people and execute them. That's all I do.
Yep.
So I can only play so much of it as that because I'm not changing it.
No.
I'm not going to be something else.
So I have to...
Because if you go to something else, you don't take over your level progress.
No.
You have to switch to a different class.
Yep.
So I'm not
it's like going from Eternal to Seasonal in Diablo.
I'm not doing it.
Now, I loved Space Marine 2, but after I completed the campaign, I have to confess, I haven't played a single operation.
Yeah. I played a few operations in the middle. I got a little stalled out on operations because I went into offline mode in the middle of one of my operations, completed it, and then my progress did not count.
Oh.
So that was a fucking problem because I hit like level 3 or 4.
Fix it.
I hit level 3 or 4 while playing. As I didn't realize I went offline because I was playing solo anyway, right? I wasn't playing with people. I was playing with bots.
Stupid people.
So I'd level 3 or 4 and then logged in the next day and went back in and I was level 1 again. And I'm like, I don't want to have to do that over again. And then there's nothing. It's again with the afterthought of the game is like there's no end game to play towards, right? That's one of the bigger issues with Diablo as a franchise as opposed to like Path of Exile. Diablo really has no goal, right? There's no end game. There's no thing to build up towards.
No.
What do I farm for so you can farm more effectively? What do I have these good items for so you can farm the same items, not even better ones?
No.
It's like...
Right.
You get to Paragon 300, which is the highest amount of levels you can get
currently,
after you've hit
currently.
the max level. It's like, what is the purpose of that? I don't know. You play the same difficulties over and over and over again. You fight the same bosses over and over and over again. What's the point?
Right, and now they made it grindier because it's like a mobile game where, well, you really can't even do that. You can't even farm for the best stuff unless you go get boss summoning materials, which you have to grind to get.
Right.
You have to grind a thing to get, and then you have to do pit runs no matter what because you have to get the glyphs in your Paragon board up, and you have to always be at a pit level 10 levels higher than the glyph, otherwise you're not guaranteed the upgrade point will stick, and then you have to go grind the boss to hope to get a drop, which you didn't get, and then up a Helltide's going on right now. You have to go do that because you have to achieve whispers, which you have to. So, and now there's a new witchcraft thing coming where you have to grind for materials to make stones to give you more upgrade. So they made it like a mobile game now where there's stuff going on 24/7 that you have to do or else you can't keep up. With Space Marine, I feel like the operations aren't quite that, but you're right in that you're not achieving anything. You're just farming to get better at farming.
But you're not even farming anything.
You're not even farming anything.
You're not even given anything. You're just playing to level up to get a better looking version of your current gear. That's it.
Skins.
Like, it's like, oh yeah, you get a better version of your weapon so you can play a harder difficulty. But then that harder difficulty becomes easier because you've got better stuff. And it's like, okay, and then I've gotten the best stuff. And I've gotten all the way leveled up. And I've played through. Now what? Well, you play the same 7 levels on the hardest difficulty that are now easy because you've gotten the best stuff and you look cool.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, and then what?
Wait for the next patch.
Nothing.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no. It's just I don't know.
However, there is a big update coming to Total War Warhammer.
Yep.
The next big, so like Thrones of Decay was a really good one, and the one before that, Shadows of Change, was first to fail, and then they recovered it and made it great.
Yep.
And so this one, which is the something of destruction.
Well, I know it's got the Skull Taker. It's got Greasus.
Goldfag
Man-Eater.
And then Gord.
The Ogre.
Golg.
The Ogre.
The Man-Eater.
The Ogre Man-Eater.
Yeah. They were originally going to call him Golg the Man-Eater.
Yep.
And then Gorbad Ironclaw for the orcs.
Okay. The
Boar riding warlord.
Yep. Or the Ardboy Boar Boss.
Yeah. Who in the lore had died like several hundred years before the modern storyline, but they always kept like rules for him in a model.
Yeah. I have the model
because he was pre-Grimgor in the lore. But it's really neat. The first thing that the official Creative Assembly team gave us was how Skulltaker plays. And so Khorne, for those who have played the game, and if you've turned off by now, whatever, but Scarbrand was the entire faction. Yes, Valkia technically was, but Scarbrand was the guy because he did what Torox did, but better. He was the momentum guy. The more he killed, the more he fought, the more he got to kill and fight, and then the better he got. And when he would do stuff, he would earn skulls, and those skulls could be spent on various things during the campaign. And the more he fought, the more momentum he got. And he on his own was a one-man engine of destruction. He could almost run by himself, and then you could just have armies following him around. For Skulltaker, they still have a lot of the base Khorne mechanics, but now when he earns skulls, he spends them on his cape. And so as he's going around, lords that are on the map, armies that are walking around will have this little number next to them, next to their flag, and it's what they're worth to him. And obviously the higher the number, the more he wants to go get them, because he accrues those skulls, and then he upgrades these places on his cape, basically, and it applies buffs to himself or to his army or to his faction, which is kind of neat. So they're really leaning into the fact that when every battle started, he did the old Troy thing where Menelaus calls Achilles up to fight.
I literally watched this recently.
Yeah, calls Achilles up to fight whoever it is, and whoever wins this duel wins the battle. And Skulltaker, if you read his Warhammer Fantasy fluff, was a lot like that. He would go to the gates of a place he's conquering and would be like, send your champion out. And then he would win. He always did. And then that was it. And then he would attack the city anyway because whatever, because it's chaos.
Yeah.
So they made him, melee duelist. It looks like he can be on foot and then on a juggernaut and then on a blood throne, which I think that'd be cool if they just gave him a new model in Age of Sigmar. Well, for all the games, I guess. It'd be cool if he had the option to be on like a blood throne.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Because he is a champ. But anyway, so that's a part of their new mechanics for them. And they did some other things which I don't quite remember that they were talking about to change up Khorne to make it a little more interesting. So it won't just apply to him, it'll apply to the other two. And then they're going to show off Golg and Gorbad in the upcoming weeks because we get this new DLC in mid-December. So that's neat because I still love that game, and it's great to see when they update it because that game doesn't have a no end game to farm for. It's really a sandbox game, so right. You can make it your own.
Yeah.
And with now officially over 100 legendary lords.
I was going to say, with so many legendary lords, you can play the different campaigns.
Yeah, and they all feel very different.
Yeah.
So that's great to see that they're still committed to that. Ogres really needed it because ogres were like Imperial agents. The ogres just didn't have anything to do in Total War. Greenskins were already pretty good. Them just getting more to do is fun.
Yep. And new ways to play. Always great. Like ogres, the end game, the end goal was actually just eating.
They're gluttons.
They're gluttons. I find myself in that camp.
I can relate to them. Big pile of meat on a bone. Mm-hmm. Just yep.
Roasted meat on the bone.
Yep.
Yep.
I could eat some meat.
I could go for that. You know what? I do miss having big turkey haunches, the Ren Fair and stuff. You ever had one of those?
I've never been to a Ren Fair.
They are pretty satisfying.
So it's weird. I'm a nerd who's never been to a Ren Fair.
Yeah.
Never watched Game of Thrones. Don't think Star Wars is that good, and have never really watched Star Trek. So if I have now alienated all 14 people in our audience.
Well, all that aside, turkey leg.
Turkey-licious.
I could eat.
Let's see.
Thanks for joining. We hope you enjoyed. Follow us for more of our weekly episodes on YouTube Podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. You can follow myself and Llama on Instagram. We are at Llama Paints Minis and Hyena Paints Minis. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. And as always, we'll catch you next time.